The Galactic Concord had ruled the stars for 12,000 years before humans ever left their small blue planet. When humanity finally built ships fast enough to reach other worlds, they found the galaxy was already full. Thousands of species had carved up the stars long ago. They had laws, governments, and armies older than human civilization itself. The elder races looked at humanity the way a grown man looks at a child trying to sit at the adult table. They were curious, yes, but they were not impressed. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was the human voice in the Concord Assembly. She stood in a great chamber where 4,000 species sent their representatives. Some were tall and covered in scales. Others floated in tanks of strange liquids. A few existed only as patterns of light. All of them had one thing in common. They believed they were better than humans. Elena had served as ambassador for 15 years. In that time, she had learned one painful truth. The galaxy did not respect kindness. It did not reward patience. It only understood power, and humanity had very little power. The first great injustice came in Elena's third year. The Velthari Dominion was a species of warrior reptiles who controlled 100 star systems. They stopped 3 human colony ships carrying 15,000 people, men, women, and children on their way to start new lives on a distant world. The Velthari claimed the humans had crossed into their space. This was a lie. Every map showed the humans were in open territory. But the Velthari took the ships anyway. They put the colonists in prison camps and refused to let them go. Elena brought the case to the Concord Assembly. She showed the maps. She presented the evidence. She begged for justice. The Assembly dismissed the case. The Velthari were too important. They had too many ships, too many allies. The humans were told to accept their loss and move on. Elena went back to Earth with empty hands and a heavy heart. 15,000 people remained in Velthari prisons. Some would die there. The second great injustice came 5 years later. The Kreth Collective was a hive species that thought of individual lives as meaningless. When a human mining company found valuable minerals on a planet the Kreth wanted, the collective did not negotiate. They did not file complaints. They simply sent warships. The Kreth bombarded the human colony from orbit. 200,000 people lived there. Farmers, miners, teachers, doctors, families who had built homes and planted gardens and dreamed of futures. The Kreth killed them all in a single afternoon. Elena screamed for justice in the assembly chamber. She showed images of the burned cities. She read the names of the dead until her voice gave out. She demanded that the Concord punish the Kreth for this massacre. The assembly issued a formal rebuke. Words on paper, nothing more. The Kreth representative actually laughed as he left the chamber. The third great injustice was the cruelest of all. The Narsu hegemony was a species obsessed with science. They studied everything. They experimented on everything. When they discovered that human brains worked differently from other species, they became very interested. Narsu agents began kidnapping human scientists. They took them to hidden laboratories and cut them open while they were still alive. They wanted to understand how humans could learn so quickly, adapt so easily, create so freely. 47 human scientists disappeared over 3 years. Their bodies were eventually found floating in space, opened up like broken machines. Elena brought evidence to the assembly. She had recordings. She had witnesses. She had proof that could not be denied. The assembly expressed concern. They promised to investigate. They did nothing. 60 years passed. 47 major incidents. 2 million human deaths. And through all of it, humanity remained calm. They filed protests. They made speeches. They followed every rule and respected every law. They believed that if they showed good faith, the galaxy would eventually treat them fairly. The elder races watched this with amusement. They had a word for species like humanity. They called them prey. Elena Vasquez grew old in her position. Her hair turned gray. Lines appeared on her face, but her eyes stayed sharp, and she never stopped fighting for her people. One day, after yet another injustice was dismissed by the assembly, a reporter from the Velthari news service approached her. He wanted to mock her. He wanted to ask how it felt to be so weak. Elena looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was not a warm smile. She said that her species had a saying, "The tallest nail gets hammered down." She told him that the galaxy had spent 60 years hammering humanity. Then she leaned close and spoke softly. She asked him to consider what would happen when they discovered the nail was made of something harder than their hammer. The reporter laughed and walked away. He thought it was an empty threat from a defeated woman. He was wrong. What the galaxy did not know was that humanity had been busy during those 60 years. On the surface, they had been patient and peaceful. They had accepted every insult, endured every attack, buried every victim with quiet dignity. But beneath the surface, something else was happening. Human scientists worked in secret laboratories hidden in places no one would ever find. Human engineers built ships in shipyards carved into rogue planets drifting between stars. Human soldiers trained for a war they hoped would never come. Every species that had wronged humanity was studied. Their weaknesses were mapped. Their secrets were uncovered. Files were created and updated and stored away for a day that might arrive. Humanity was not being patient because they were weak. They were being patient because they were not yet ready. Elena Vasquez knew the truth. She had known it for decades. Sometimes, late at night, she would look at the stars and wonder if she would live to see the day when humanity would finally stop pretending. She hoped that day would never come. She hoped the galaxy would learn to treat her people fairly before it was too late. But she also knew her people. She knew their history. She knew what humans were capable of when they were pushed too far. The galaxy had spent 60 years creating enemies. They just did not know it yet. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, humanity continued to prepare. They remembered every name. They recorded every wrong. They waited for the day when patience would no longer be enough. That day was coming. The elder races could not see it. They were too proud, too certain of their own power. They looked at humanity and saw only weakness. They did not understand that the patient ones were the most dangerous of all. The Rithani sovereignty was one of the oldest powers in the galaxy. They had ruled their corner of space for 9,000 years. Their warriors were feared. Their ships were deadly. Their leader, Grand Sovereign Malkithos, believed his species was destined to dominate all others. Malkithos hated humans. He called them vermin. He said they bred too fast and spread too quickly. He told his people that humans were like insects and should be treated the same way. When human explorers discovered a small moon rich with valuable minerals, they were excited. The moon was in unclaimed space. No species had touched it. According to conquered law, it belonged to whoever found it first. The humans built a research station there. They called it Horizon's Edge. Scientists came to study the minerals. Engineers came to design mining equipment. Families came because the pay was good and the future looked bright. 847 people lived on Horizon's Edge. Among them were 203 children. The station had a school where kids learned math and science and dreamed about the stars. A little girl named Maya Chen was 7 years old. She loved to draw pictures of spaceships. Her mother, Dr. Sarah Chen, was a geologist who studied rocks and minerals. They had come to Horizon's Edge together, just the two of them, hoping for a new beginning. Malkithos wanted that moon. He did not care about conquered law. He did not care that humans had found it first. He only cared that it had resources his empire could use. His advisors told him to file a claim with the Concord. They said diplomacy might work. Malkithos laughed at them. Why waste time with words when he had warships? The attack came on a quiet morning. Maya Chen was in school, drawing a picture for her mother. Dr. Sarah Chen was in her laboratory, examining rock samples. Neither of them knew that death was falling from the sky. Rithani warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above the station. There were 12 of them, enough firepower to destroy a small planet. Horizon's Edge had no weapons. It was a research station, not a military base. The only defenses were emergency shelters designed to protect people from meteor strikes. The Rithani commander received his orders from Malkithos himself. The Grand Sovereign had been very specific. He wanted to send a message to the humans. He wanted them to understand their place in the galaxy. He ordered the commander to target the school first. The first missiles hit the children's wing at 9:47 station time. Maya Chen was still holding her drawing when the ceiling collapsed. She never knew what happened. One moment she was coloring a spaceship blue. The next moment, there was only fire and darkness. Dr. Sarah Chen felt the station shake. Alarms screamed. Emergency lights flashed red. She ran toward the school, but there was nothing left to run to. Just twisted metal and broken dreams. She found a working communication panel and sent a message. Not to the station security, not to the emergency teams, to the Concord Assembly, where Ambassador Elena Vasquez was attending a routine session. Elena was listening to a trade dispute when her personal device lit up. She saw the incoming transmission and accepted it. Dr. Chen's face appeared on the screen, covered in dust and tears. The woman's voice was breaking as she spoke. She said they were being attacked. She said the Rithani had targeted the school first. She said they had killed the children. Elena stood frozen as the message continued. Behind Dr. Chen, she could hear explosions. She could hear people screaming. She could hear the sound of a civilization that had finally pushed too far. Dr. Chen grabbed her device with shaking hands. She looked directly into the camera. She was holding something. A piece of paper. A child's drawing of a blue spaceship. She begged someone to help them. She called out to God. She said her daughter's name. Then the transmission ended. Elena Vasquez stood in the middle of the assembly chamber while 4,000 species watched her. Some were confused. Some were curious. A few were already smiling, knowing what had happened. The Rithani representative received a message from his homeworld. He read it, and then stood to address the assembly. He announced that the Rithani sovereignty had cleansed a human infestation from rightful Rithani territory. He said the vermin had been shown the same mercy they deserved. He was still smiling when he sat down. Elena did not scream. She did not cry. She did not beg for justice that would never come. Instead, she did something no one expected. She smiled back. It was a terrible smile. The kind of smile that made ancient species feel suddenly cold. The kind of smile that belonged on the face of something dangerous. She addressed the assembly in a calm voice. She said she was withdrawing humanity from the Galactic Concord. Effective immediately. All treaties were cancelled. All agreements were void. The chamber erupted in confused noise. Withdrawal? That was their response to an attack? Running away? Elena raised her hand for silence. The noise died. Something in her eyes made even the proudest species want to listen. She informed the assembly that the human military doctrine known as Protocol Prometheus had been activated. For the first time in human history, this protocol was now in effect. No one knew what Protocol Prometheus meant, but the way she said it made several representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. She told them they had 60 cycles to remove all diplomatic staff from human space. She said this was not a request. It was a warning. Then she said something that would be remembered for centuries. She told them that for 60 years, humanity had been patient. They had followed the rules. They had trusted in justice. They had buried their dead and kept hoping for peace. That time was over now. She looked directly at the Rithani representative. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper, but every being in the chamber heard her clearly. She told him that 847 people had died that day. She said 203 of them were children. She promised that humanity would remember every single name. Then she walked out of the chamber. No one followed her. No one tried to stop her. No one said a word. The elder races sat in silence, trying to understand what had just happened. Some thought it was an empty gesture. Some thought humans were simply running away. Some thought nothing would change. They were all wrong. Far away, in the darkness between stars, human ships began to move. Engineers powered up systems that had waited decades for this moment. Soldiers received orders they had trained their whole lives to follow. Humanity was done being patient. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. For 60 years, the elder races had watched humanity. They had spies in human space. They had sensors pointed at human worlds. They knew everything about human military strength, or so they thought. The reports were always the same. Humans had a small defense force. Their ships were old and slow. Their weapons were weak compared to the great powers. They were not a threat to anyone. These reports were carefully designed lies. In the 72 hours after Ambassador Vasquez walked out of the assembly, every intelligence agency in the galaxy went into emergency mode. They needed to know what Protocol Prometheus meant. They needed to understand what was coming. The Kreth Collective, the same species that had killed 200,000 humans years ago, sent their best spy drones into human space. These drones were invisible to every known sensor. They had never failed before. None of them came back. The Narsu hegemony, the ones who had kidnapped and dissected human scientists, sent scout ships to find the human fleet. The scouts were fast and quiet. They knew how to avoid detection. They found nothing. Empty space where human ships should have been. Then their transmissions stopped. Then silence. On the fourth day, the first revelation came. Grand Sovereign Malkethos was feeling confident. The Concord had done nothing about his attack on Horizon's Edge. The humans had run away. He decided to send a patrol fleet to claim the mineral-rich moon officially. 30 warships jumped into the system. They were powerful vessels, each one capable of destroying a small colony. Their commanders were veterans of 100 battles. They found a single human ship waiting for them. The ship was strange. It did not match any design in the Ruthani database. It was smaller than a cruiser but shaped wrong, with angles that seemed to bend light in uncomfortable ways. The patrol commander laughed when he saw it. 1 ship against 30. This would be easy. He ordered his weapons officers to lock on and prepare to fire. The human ship moved. Later, when scientists studied the recordings, they could not explain what happened. The ship did not fly through space. It seemed to fold space around itself, appearing in 30 different places at the same time. In 0.003 seconds, every Ruthani warship was disabled. Not destroyed. Disabled. Their weapons went offline. Their engines died. Their shields collapsed. They floated helplessly in the void. No missiles had been fired. No energy beams had been detected. No weapons of any known type had been used. The patrol commander's final transmission was captured by a Ruthani listening post. He said one word, over and over, in a whisper filled with terror. Impossible, impossible, impossible. The galaxy began to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. Humanity had not been weak for 60 years. They had been hiding. Every insult, every attack, every murdered civilian had given them more time. More time to build, more time to prepare, more time to create weapons the galaxy had never imagined. While human children went to school and human workers went to their jobs, other humans worked in places no one could find. Shipyards carved into rogue planets that drifted in the darkness between stars, research stations hidden inside gas giants, laboratories buried beneath the ice of frozen moons. They had recruited the smartest minds from every human world. They had given them unlimited resources and a single mission: make humanity strong enough that no one would ever hurt them again. And for 60 years, these scientists and engineers had succeeded beyond anyone's dreams. They had discovered how to fold space, allowing ships to travel without using the normal faster-than-light corridors that everyone else depended on. They could appear anywhere, anytime, without warning. They had created weapons that did not destroy but unmade, devices that could convince matter to simply stop being solid, missiles that existed in multiple dimensions at once. They had built ships that thought for themselves, armored with materials that did not exist in nature, powered by energy sources that broke the laws of physics. And they had kept all of it secret, perfectly, completely secret. For 60 years, the conquered demanded explanations. They sent formal requests to the human government. They wanted to know about Protocol Prometheus. They wanted to understand what they were facing. Human military historians responded with a single document. It was not a threat. It was not a warning. It was a history lesson. The document listed every wrong done to humanity since they joined the Concord. Every attack, every kidnapping, every murder, every time the Assembly had laughed at human suffering. It included names. 2 million names. Every human who had died because the galaxy thought they were weak. It included dates and places and the species responsible. It included the exact words of the Concord rulings that had denied justice. The final page contained 4 words in every language used in the galaxy. We remember them all. Species that had dismissed humanity for 60 years suddenly felt something they had not felt in a very long time. Fear. The Velthari Dominion, who still held human prisoners from 60 years ago, quietly began preparing those prisoners for release. The Kreth Collective recalled its ships from human space. The Narsu hegemony held emergency meetings to decide what to do. But it was too late for decisions. It was too late for apologies. It was too late for anything except what was coming. Ambassador Elena Vasquez received a message from Earth. She read it alone in her quarters, then looked out the window at the stars. The message informed her that the first phase of Protocol Prometheus was complete. Human forces were in position. Targets had been selected. The galaxy would soon learn that patience was not the same as weakness. Elena thought about Dr. Sarah Chen and her daughter Maya. She thought about the blue spaceship drawing that had been broadcast across the galaxy. She thought about 203 children who had died because a proud species wanted to send a message. Now humanity would send their own message. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer for what was coming. Not for the humans. For everyone else. Because the patient ones had stopped being patient, and the galaxy was not ready for what that meant. The Rithani sovereignty had 12,000 warships. They controlled 80 worlds filled with billions of citizens. Their military had dominated their region of space for 9,000 years. They had never lost a war. It took humanity 16 days to break them completely. The human fleet did not announce itself. There were no declarations of war, no final warnings, no chances to surrender. One moment, Rithani space was calm. The next moment, human ships appeared at every military base, every shipyard, every weapons factory across the entire sovereignty. They appeared from nowhere. Not from faster-than-light corridors, not from hidden positions. They simply existed where they had not existed before. The Rithani tried to fight. They were a proud warrior species. Surrender was not in their nature. But how do you fight an enemy you cannot see coming? How do you defend against weapons you cannot understand? Human ships moved through Rithani defenses like ghosts. Missiles passed through shields as if the shields were not there. Energy weapons switched off Rithani systems without damaging them. It was not a battle. It was a demonstration. But the true terror was not the technology. It was the precision. Human forces did not attack cities. They did not bomb civilian areas. They did not kill anyone who was not actively fighting them. Every strike was surgical. Every target was military. Rithani civilians watched from their homes as their entire fleet was dismantled piece by piece. Ships that had terrified dozens of species floated dead in space, their crews alive but helpless. Bases that had trained generations of warriors went dark, their weapons silent, their soldiers sitting in confusion. Grand Sovereign Malkathos sat in his throne room and watched his empire crumble. Reports came in every hour, each one worse than the last. Day 1, 30% of the fleet disabled. Day 3, 60%. Day 7, 90%. Day 16, 100%. Not a single Rithani warship remained operational. Not a single military base was functional. The greatest military power in the region had been reduced to nothing, and still, no Rithani civilian had been killed. The Grand Sovereign could not understand it. In every war he had ever studied, the winner destroyed everything. They bombed cities. They killed millions. They made the loser pay in blood and fire. But the humans did none of this. They broke his military and left his people alone. It was like being punished by a god who was angry but not cruel. On day 17, human soldiers arrived at the throne world. They did not come in overwhelming numbers. They did not burn the cities or storm the palace with massive armies. A single transport ship landed in the capital square. 100 soldiers walked out in perfect formation. They marched to the palace. The palace guards tried to stop them. The human soldiers did not kill the guards. They simply walked past them, and somehow the guards found themselves unable to move until the humans were gone. Malkathos waited in his throne room. He had his personal guard around him, the finest warriors of the sovereignty, armed with the best weapons available. The doors opened. The humans walked in, and somehow, without a single shot being fired, the guards were on the ground, and the Grand Sovereign was in restraints. A human officer approached the throne. She was a small woman with gray hair and hard eyes. She read from a document in a clear, calm voice. She told Malkathos he was under arrest. She listed the charges: 847 counts of murder, 203 counts of child murder, crimes against humanity, crimes against peace. She told him he would stand trial. He would have lawyers. He would have the chance to defend himself. Every legal protection would be observed. Malkathos could not believe what he was hearing. Trial? Lawyers? Legal protection? He had expected execution. He had expected torture. He had expected the humans to do what any species in their position would do. He asked why they were not simply killing him. The officer looked at him with those hard eyes. She said that killing was easy. Justice was harder. She said humanity had learned the difference a long time ago. The trial was broadcast across the entire galaxy. 4,000 species watched as the Grand Sovereign of the Rithani was brought before a human court. The evidence was overwhelming. Recordings of his orders, testimony from his own officers, the final transmission from Horizon's Edge, including Dr. Sarah Chen's desperate plea and the blue spaceship drawing her daughter had been making when she died. The prosecution did not ask for death. They asked for something worse. Malkathos was sentenced to imprisonment for the rest of his natural life. For a Rithani, that meant approximately 400 years. He would spend every day of those 4 centuries in a cell. On the walls of that cell, The names of his victims were inscribed. 847 names. He would see them when he woke up. He would see them when he went to sleep. He would see them every moment of every day for 400 years. He would never be allowed to forget what he had done. The Rithani sovereignty was not destroyed. It was reformed. Humans did not take their worlds or their resources. Instead, they helped the Rithani write a new constitution. One that guaranteed rights. One that prevented future leaders from doing what Malkithos had done. Then humanity turned its attention to the others. The Velthari Dominion surrendered immediately. They released every human prisoner they had held for 60 years. They paid reparations. They apologized publicly and completely. The Kreth Collective tried to flee. Their leaders took their best ships and ran toward the galactic rim, hoping to hide in the empty spaces between stars. Human ships found them anyway. They were brought back to face justice for 200,000 deaths. The Narsu Hegemony's scientific council, the ones who had dissected living humans, were extracted from their homeworld in a single night. No one saw the human soldiers come. No one saw them leave. The scientists simply vanished from their beds and appeared in human custody. Their trials lasted 3 months. The galaxy watched in silence. Every species that had wronged humanity faced consequences. Not genocide, not extinction. Justice. Proportional, precise, and absolutely unavoidable. The patient ones had remembered everything. And now the galaxy understood what that meant. No crime had been forgotten. No debt had been erased. Every drop of human blood that had been spilled had been recorded and accounted for. Humanity had not become monsters. They had become something far more frightening. They had become exactly what the galaxy had forced them to be. 1 year after Protocol Prometheus began, Ambassador Elena Vasquez returned to the Galactic Concord. She did not come to ask for readmission. She did not come to negotiate treaties. She came to deliver a message that would change the galaxy forever. The assembly chamber was fuller than it had ever been. 4,000 species had sent their highest representatives. Some came out of fear. Some came out of curiosity. All of them came because they knew that whatever happened today would shape the future of civilization. Elena walked to the central podium. She was older now, her hair completely white. But she moved with the same strength she had shown when she first became ambassador decades ago. Her eyes were clear and calm. The chamber was silent. No one whispered. No one moved. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. She began to speak. She told them that for 12,000 years, the Concord had been built on a simple idea. The strong took what they wanted. The weak suffered what they had to. This was the rule that every species had followed. This was the foundation of galactic civilization. She told them that humanity had believed in something different. They had believed in fairness, in justice, in the idea that all beings deserved respect, regardless of their power. They had been wrong to believe that the galaxy would share these values. She paused and looked around the chamber. Representatives from species that had laughed at humanity for 60 years. Species that had killed human children and faced no consequences. Species that had watched millions die and called it acceptable. She told them that humanity had learned their lesson. They had learned that the galaxy only respected strength. They had spent 60 years building that strength while the elder races mocked them. Now they had more strength than any species in history. They had weapons that could unmake fleets. They had ships that could appear anywhere without warning. They had technology that made the great powers look like children playing with sticks. But she said humanity was not like the elder races. They would not use their power to conquer. They would not take worlds or enslave populations or demand tribute. They did not want to become the thing they had fought against. She raised her hand and the chamber's display systems activated. Images appeared around her. 847 faces. Men, women, and children from Horizon's Edge, including a 7-year-old girl named Maya Chen, holding a drawing of a blue spaceship. She let the images hang in the air for a long moment. Then she spoke again. She explained what humanity wanted. They wanted safety, not dominance. Safety. The guarantee that no human would ever again be killed while the galaxy watched and did nothing. She outlined what would later be called the Prometheus Doctrine. Its rules were simple. Humanity would never fire the first shot. They would never attack without cause. They would never seek to expand their territory through force. But any species that harmed human civilians would face consequences. Not war, not genocide. Consequences. Proportional to the crime. Precise in their execution. absolutely inevitable. She told them there would be no more dismissals, no more formal rebukes, no more concern without action. If human blood was spilled, the ones who spilled it would answer for every drop. She looked directly at the species representatives who had wronged humanity in the past. The Velthari, the Kreth, the Narsu, the Rithani, all of them sitting in silence, afraid to meet her eyes. She told them that humanity remembered everything. Every attack, every insult, every life lost. They had filed it all away and they would never forget. But she also told them that humanity believed in second chances. The past was settled. Justice had been delivered. Now was the time to build something new. She invited the galaxy to join humanity in creating a different kind of civilization. One where disputes were resolved through law instead of force. One where the weak were protected instead of exploited. One where children could grow up without fear. She said humanity would help any species that wanted to build such a future. They would share technology. They would provide protection. They would be partners instead of masters. But she warned them that the choice was theirs. Humanity would not force anyone to be good. They would simply make sure that being bad had consequences. She stepped back from the podium. Her message was finished. Now the galaxy would decide how to respond. For a long moment, no one moved. The silence was complete. Then, slowly, the representative from a small species called the Tanari stood up. The Tanari had never been powerful. They had suffered under the old system just like humanity had. They had watched the events of the past year with hope they had not felt in generations. The Tanari representative walked to the center of the chamber. He faced Elena Vasquez and spoke the first words anyone had said since she began. He said his people accepted. They wanted to build the new civilization. They wanted to be partners. Another representative stood, then another, then dozens, then hundreds. Species that had been bullied for centuries. Species that had lost hope. Species that had watched humanity's transformation and seen something they wanted to be part of. By the time the day ended, over half the Concord had joined humanity's new alliance. The galaxy had changed forever. 300 years later, historians would call this moment the beginning of the long peace. The era when the galaxy finally grew up. War did not disappear completely. Some species still tried to take what was not theirs. Some criminals still hurt innocent people. But these incidents were rare, and they were always answered. The Prometheus Doctrine became the foundation of interstellar law. Its principles were taught in every school on every world. The strong protected the weak. Justice was not optional. Memory was not revenge. On Earth's moon, there was a memorial, a crystal structure floating in orbit, containing 847 names. Every year, on the anniversary of Horizon's Edge, human ships gathered there in silence, but they were not alone anymore. Ships from across the galaxy joined them. Species that had once been enemies now came to remember, to honor, to promise that it would never happen again. At the center of the memorial was a hologram of a drawing, a blue spaceship, sketched by a 7-year-old girl who had dreamed of the stars. Maya Chen had never gotten to explore those stars, but because of her, because of what her death had started, the galaxy had become a place where other children could. Ambassador Elena Vasquez did not live to see the long peace. She died 12 years after her famous speech, surrounded by family and friends. Her last words were simple. She said she was proud of her people. She said they had proven that patience and strength could exist together. She said the galaxy had finally learned the lesson humanity had always known. The lesson was written on her memorial stone. It would be repeated by diplomats and leaders and teachers for centuries to come. Never mistake patience for weakness. Never mistake mercy for fear. And never, ever forget that the ones who remember everything are the ones who shape the future. Humanity had remembered, and the galaxy would never forget.